I don't like to be sold, but I love to buy. So I look at it as a salesperson, as a business owner, you are my guide to help me understand why I should do business with you. And if you guide me and you help me follow the journey and you get me to a point where I can see and connect the dots of how you're going to help me, I will buy. But if you try to push me on that journey, it's going to be a different story. I will put up my resistance and I will likely turn off and shut down from your attempt to sell me.
Yeah, guide me, but don't like grab my arm and drag me.
Yeah, and that's what having, and this comes back to like a tip is how do you map your customer journey? So how you sell and how people buy are two very different things. So understanding how people make a purchase decision is extremely important.
Hey, Ashley, welcome to Keep What You Earn.
Hey, Shannon. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. So we were just chatting a little bit before we hit record, and I would love it if you could introduce yourself to our audience, but also include, if you could, an interesting fact about yourself that most people don't know.
Absolutely. So my name is Ashley Frank. I have spent about 15 years in the sales world inside of corporations and startups. I don't think anybody necessarily leaves college and says that they want to be a salesperson, but I interviewed, found myself in the sales world, and actually found out I was quite good at doing sales over the 15 years. Over my career, I guess I worked in primarily technology-focused companies selling business-to-business solutions. And I've also led teams during that time and built teams and found a lot of inspiration and joy, I guess, working with teams and helping other people grow into sales professionals. Toward the end of my corporate tour, I did about a 3.5 year detour in HR and took on an HR role inside of a startup that was then acquired by a large media company. And in 2021, decided that I was not up for that game anymore and stepped out on my own. And I've kind of been figuring things out ever since, but really want to work with people, helping them believe in themselves. I believe in people and I want to see people do well. And I want to encourage people to chase what really matters to them. And part of that in this entrepreneurial world is making sure that you can actually sell and get past that awkwardness of sales. Outside of the business and outside of the corporate world and outside of my professional history, I guess one fun fact is I'm actually training to be a commercial pilot right now. So, as if it wasn't crazy enough to leave a job and start your own business, I was like, you only get to do this once. So I'm going to go be a pilot. So I'm training to be a pilot, working toward my private license right now. And in 2023, we'll start toward my commercial. So that keeps me busy outside of all of this.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That's super interesting too. And, we share a little bit of similar background in that, like we started in corporate, 15 or so years. And what most people don't know, unless you listen to my whole episode when I introduced myself, guys, was I also worked in technical sales for 2 years. And I actually sold to other accountants, and I learned sales from salespeople, from books, from trainings and things like that, and from my husband. And sales is no joke. It's both an art and a science, but it is also super fun if you can open yourself up to it. And that's what we're going to unpack today with Ashley. And I would love to know, Ashley, two things. How did you get into sales or begin enjoying sales? And also how you define sales.
Yeah. So I guess how I got into sales, as I kind of mentioned in the intro, I don't think anybody leaves college or university and says, I want to go be in sales. My goal when I left college was to go find a job that paid above minimum wage and to make money, because a lot of the times graduates come out and you're paid a very minimal amount of money to go in and gain experience and then grow up the chain over time. So I interviewed with 2 companies, both in sales roles, and actually got offers from both companies, went in and started in the sales world. And I think, how I got started was the interview that I did with the manager back 15 years ago. The manager just gave me that vibe of like, this is a good place to work. Still had no idea what I was getting into with sales. And I was selling online learning before online learning was cool. So going into that as a brand new grad, no idea where to start. I think I was just maybe naive and didn't know what sales really entailed. So getting in there, it just gave me a good foundation. And I just came to really enjoy the challenge of like working with people. You're going in, you're trying to help people and change the way that they do business. And I really enjoyed that. And I think the biggest thing for me over the years has been the clients that I've worked with and the teams that I've been part of and the people factor of that. When I look at sales, I look at sales as it's an opportunity to help and serve. So when I approach a sales situation, I'm never going in just to sell a product or a service because I want to make the sale. I'm going in, and if I'm going to make a sale, it truly has to be something that's going to help somebody. And if it's not the right fit for you, I'm going to say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for you, or maybe this is not the right time. Going back, I think AJ Brand Builders Group says this, but you win the relationship first and then everything else follows. And I really believe that if you make a relationship with somebody, years down the road, you may have an interaction where you're like, oh, I need to reach out to this individual. And that's worked really well for me over the past 15 years. And yeah, sales to me it's an opportunity to help and serve. It's not just, selling a product, and very much it's an exchange of energy more than an exchange of just physical goods and products.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's just always this negative association with sales, that it's somehow manipulative or it has, negative intentions. But I think that, we have to, I mean, this show is called Keep What You Earn. You have to start by earning.
Yeah,
And a lot of business owners are, they love what they do. They have a passion to serve and serve and serve, but they're not really infusing sales into that service, or they're just not applying a sales mindset and a sales skill set. Can you just speak to, what you're seeing right now and the best tips you have for, let's say, online entrepreneurs, and let's use business to business as our example, just to keep it simple. What are some of the things that you're seeing, maybe even common mistakes, or tips that you have?
absolutely. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that happens is that entrepreneurs, you're starting your business, or maybe you're a couple of years into your business. Maybe you were an accountant in a previous life, or that's your professional designation. Maybe you're a carpenter or a plumber, right? And you're just like, hey, I want to go out and do this on my own. So you leave with these really great skills. You get all excited. You're going to go out, you're going to work for yourself. And then you become the worst boss in the world because you don't have the business background. And with that, people who are going out to sell, especially if don't have a business background and a sales background, is they're trying to sell to absolutely everybody. So they're trying to make their message go to the tech business and the carpentry business and, Joe down the street who has like a furniture store. They're trying to service everybody. And at the end of the day, as much as you want to work with everybody, everybody is not your audience. And you do have to get clear on who you're selling to. It doesn't mean that you only sell to accountants or you only sell to furniture stores. What it does mean is that the way that you approach accountants and the way that you approach furniture stores are two very different, two very different sales and approaches, because the messaging is what matters. And if you go in and you're like, hey, I'm Shannon and I help everybody, people are like, everybody, really? Why should I talk to you? People want to feel like you can relate to them. So the first thing would be just
Yeah.
knowing your audience. And then the second thing is just having confidence in your ability to share your story. I really find that people are oftentimes afraid to share their story and afraid to put a little personality behind the business. They come in and they want to sell you a bookkeeping service, or they want to sell you digital marketing. People don't buy a product. People buy a feeling. People buy a relationship. People buy from people, right? I mean, we always get into this world of business to business, business to consumer. It's really people to people. People buy from people, and people buy because they like people, or they can relate to somebody. So don't be afraid to put a little bit of your personality into that and kind of, pull the shade down a little bit and like be a little vulnerable with people and let them know, like, here's why I want to work with you. And then the third thing,
100%.
yeah. And then the third thing would just be have a genuine concern, right? If you're going to work with somebody and you're going to sell them something, know that you're doing the right thing. Don't do it just because you need the quick sale. Because if you're chasing after a quick sale, it's never going to work out right for you in the long term. You have to genuinely build the relationship and know that you're going into this for the right reasons. You close a sale just because you need the extra $1,000, $2,000 that month. it's going to bite you down the road. It may not hit you right away, but it will somehow find its way back. You'll get a bad fit client. You'll find out that you can't service the individual, whatever it may be. So make sure that your intention going into this is the right intention behind it.
Oh, I totally agree. And the other thing too is when someone buys from you, what they're doing is they're investing trust. That's what they're doing because that it's not about the money. It's not about the price tag. It's what is the price of their trust and what are they investing in you? Because when I buy something and I hire, even hiring a mentor, a coach, a program, things like that, especially when there's uncertainty around the result, you go, wait a minute, I'm going to invest my trust in this person. And God, I hope they deliver. Like everyone is rooting for success.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is rooting for success. And that sale is really the making the case for why people should trust you. And if you have conviction and you believe you are trustworthy, then there's nothing to worry about. But I think that people just get hung up on this transaction over the trust factor, and they're just trying to execute the transaction at a surface level, or they're just so focused on almost gamifying it like it's a win if they sell, and not really looking at you know their own practices of how they're selling, how they're infusing trust, how they're building trust, and did you make a strong case for why someone should trust you? And I think that's a huge misconception right now is that like we're all going after this like numbers game, volume. I just think that if you're in any type of professional service, you need to be playing the trust game.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And if you go into this and you don't build trust, people will feel through that, right? If you're going into this with the intention of, I just have to make a sale today, people will feel that. People can feel the energy that you're approaching with. People will feel if you're being pushy and rushy. And I think that's why, as humans, we are so afraid of sales, right? We walk into a electronics store and the first thing somebody is on you asking you why you need to buy a computer today or a TV, because we don't like to be sold, but we love to buy. Like that is just
Right.
like I don't like to be sold, but I love to buy. So if you are, I look at it as a salesperson, as a business owner, you are my guide to help me understand why I should do business with you. And if you guide me and you help me follow the journey and you get me to a point where I can see and connect the dots of how you're going to help me, I will buy. But if you try to push me on that journey, it's going to be a different story. I will put up my resistance and I will likely turn off and shut down from your attempt to sell me.
Yeah, guide me, but don't like grab my arm and drag me.
Yeah, and that's what having, and this comes back to like a tip is how do
Mhm.
you map your customer journey? So how you sell and how people buy are two very different things. So understanding how people make a purchase decision is extremely important. If your process is mapped out step one, step two, step three, step four, close, but the person's like, hey, step one, I got to do a bit of research, and then I'm going to talk to them, and then I'm going to talk it over with my spouse, and then I'm going to talk it over with my business partners. Then I'm going to come back and get a little more research. Sales is not a linear process. Sales goes back and forth and around, and before you get to the final decision. So if you have what you would consider a rigid sales funnel, and you're trying to like push people through with check marks, sales is not a check mark activity. You do have to guide and you have to kind of map yourself to the way the individual buys. And gets back to being specific on who you serve and how you serve them.
Definitely. And you mentioned, so we were talking about, trust and talking about, the business owner engaging in sales activities, especially when you're starting out, you're doing all the sales yourself, right? And, and not everyone has that skill set. In fact, I'd say most people don't have that skill set and have never sold anything before, or they've been working as a quote unquote technician, to quote the E Myth. They're working as a technician and they've never had to actually sell their own services. People just come to them and they get it done. And I'll use accountants as a great example of this, where they are really good order takers, but they are terrible salespeople. As a generalization, because they've never had to sell what people need every year.
Absolutely.
So they've never had to convince someone that they have to go do their taxes. It's like, no, you do. This is kind of a thing. Like you have to do it every year. But what most people don't do is they don't argue, why me? Why should I be the one to do it? And why should you trust me for a long-term relationship? So that's really interesting too. I want to go into why when we're talking about trust in that relationship, in that sales transaction from a buyer and a seller, it is super hard to let go as an entrepreneur of that function of sales, because I feel like you said, people buy from people.
Hmm.
So let's talk about the role of the founder in the sales transaction and your advice on, outsourcing sales functions, because that's got to be, I mean, I know for me personally, this is kind of like a little masterclass for me on, I don't see myself ever not being involved in sales, because people are buying my brand and they want to talk to me. And I feel like if you, right from the get go, make yourself unavailable, that also sets a tone. So I would love to hear your thoughts on, founder involvement in the sales process over the evolution of their business.
Absolutely. This is a great topic. I've had a lot of conversations and worked with a lot of founders over the years of tech companies as well as other service based companies, especially technical founders. So if you're starting a software company or an IT type company, and you're a programmer, it's not your first instinct to be able to go out there and sell. So I've talked to a lot of founders who want to outsource sales immediately. They're like, I'm going to go hire a VP of sales. I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to pay them, and I'm going to give them, equity in the company or whatever it may be. And as a founder, I really think that you have to be involved in those early stage sales. If you don't have the skills, find a mentor, a coach, find somebody who can support you in the process and helping you get comfortable with sales. Maybe that individual can jump on calls with you. Maybe that person can help you craft your outreach campaign and kind of be there as the cheerleader to make sure that you're moving forward, and it will help build the confidence. But as a founder, it's so important that you're involved in the sales because, first of all, you have the passion for the company and the product that you developed. Nobody else can come in and be as excited about what you're offering as you can be. And then you're also the face of the company. And through those early stage founder sales, things are going to be kind of awkward and clunky, right? You want sales to kind of do this beautiful scaling, and you're like, hey, all of a sudden we have a sales machine and they're coming in and people are coming off our website and we're closing sales. The reality is your first 25K, 50K, it's not going to be like that. It is going to be a very manual process, and every conversation is going to be different. And just when you think you have it figured out, you're going to be like, nope, this sale is different. So as a founder, being involved in that helps you pivot and position and understand where your value is in the market and also who you serve. Maybe you start off with 3 kind of core audiences that you think you serve. And through conversations, you're like, hey, this audience is the audience that we want to double down on. Then you can start developing your process around that, documenting everything, creating I really don't like the word, but creating your scripts or your talk points and really
Framework, right?
Framework, exactly.
Yeah.
Your framework. And then really like documenting those customer success stories. So why are people talking to you? Why do people engage with you? Why do people buy from you? Why don't they buy from you? What are the objections that come up? These are all things that you'll learn through the founder sales process. Once you have that figured out and documented, then you can start hiring somebody to come in and support you. But to bring somebody off the street and expect them to do all of that work and be as excited about your offer as you can be, it's not fair. And I've watched founders spend a lot of money, hiring people to come in saying, hey, you're our new salesperson, you're the head of sales, go sell, only to find out 3 to 6 months later that they're not making progress. And they put the blame on the individual. Well, you had sales experience. Why can't you sell my product? Well, you as a founder have kind of like washed your hands, never really understood even what your key performance indicators are, what your metrics are, what you're measuring. So you hired somebody and have no idea how to measure them. You're looking at just how much revenue they've created, but how many customers are they reaching out to? What kind of conversations are they having, right? Everything goes back from revenue. So if you base everything just on revenue, you can't necessarily control the revenue number. But what you can control is how many phone calls you make, how many networking events, how many follow-ups, how many times you follow up. Those are the leading indicators of where you will actually get with success in your ultimate revenue.
Yep. And this is what we talk about, guys. I talk about KPIs, leading and lagging indicators as a CFO. This is what we're talking about. So then the CFO can look at that and say, hey, revenue is down. Well, let's look at the leading indicators on the front end and see why is that happening? And, where is the breakdown? Is the story the same? I think that's so important to look at more than just the revenue numbers, but also I love that you hit on this because you have a scorecard with no boundaries. There's nothing on the scorecard. It's just how much did you make? And that's not necessarily an indicator of performance, but also that doesn't give you good feedback on what to
Exactly.
do next. And that's the biggest thing is, does your scorecard tell you what to do, what to fix? Because if it's like, oh, it's broken. Great, what's broken? Like, what do we have to fix? Or do we have to like it's like a coffee machine that just has one little thing wrong with it, but you're gonna buy a whole new one because you can't figure out what's wrong. And it's so important. Business owners do this all the time. They think the person is the ill fit, or they think that the whole business is not a good fit because of one little thing they could tweak if they could just identify it faster.
And then you'll hear founders and business owners make the excuse of it just wasn't the right hire. So they go out and hire
Right.
the next salesperson and the exact same thing happens. So if you are fortunate enough as a business owner, or maybe you're venture backed, that you can go out and hire somebody to help support sales, that is great. But I truly believe that you can't just wash your hands. You have to be involved and you have to be on customer calls, because in the end, that person may not be with your business forever, but you are the face of the business. And when you go to conferences, you want people to recognize you. And when you're out, talking to customers feel that sense of like, oh, I'm actually dealing with the person who founded this company. And it actually empowers them and makes them excited. And then referrals happen and all of that magic. So as a founder, you have to establish those boxes and guidelines around what your KPIs are, and understand the mechanics. And if you're not a salesperson, first, you're probably not going to know that, but there is a wealth of information out there. Or go hire a coach. Go hire, if you want to accelerate, instead of going out and hiring a VP of sales right away, go out and hire yourself a really great coach who can help get you from where you are to your first 25, 50, 60K, and then start considering how to actually hire and integrate somebody into the team. And if you find a good coach or a good individual who can help support you, they will actually help you position when to bring a person in, and then how to interview for that salesperson as well. Because somebody with 20 years sales experience may not necessarily be the best fit for your business when you're early stage. You need a certain kind of
Yeah.
individual to come work with you.
Yeah, and I'll use my use case as an example here, where I was working at a tech company, a SaaS company, and I was a consultant for the customer. Like, I was an implementation consultant. And what happened was, the sales engineer was out, and they said, "Hey, Shannon, like, we're selling two CPAs, keep in mind." So they go, "Shannon's a CPA and she knows how to use the software. Maybe she can explain to the customer how to use it." And what ended up happening was, we were crushing demos because I was telling actual stories from actual use from actual customers, and my own, like, "Hey, you know when a customer does this and it drives you crazy?" And they're like, "Yes, oh my God." Like, there was that, like, that immediate of, "Yes, we understand." And I saw it in their eyes, and I saw them go, "Oh my God, she gets us." And then I realized, oh, this is sales. It's storytelling and relating to people in a whole new and I thought it was so fun because I have, like, the heart of a teacher. I love teaching and having someone go, "Oh, I get it." And
Mm-hmm.
that makes me go, "Okay, cool, then let's keep going." And what I discovered was I actually really liked sales because it was tapping into those skills, but I had never associated sales with that before. And that's actually when I transitioned. I became director of technical sales for that company soon thereafter, because I could tell the stories, but also as a user of it. So when you're the founder and you know the mission and you know the goal and you know the result that you want to achieve, and you have, evidence of that, I feel like it's just a different tone when you show up and say, "No, it's amazing. Let me explain to you how it works." Versus someone who's in sales, knows how to sell, but someone who is a user of your product or is an expert in what it is your product does is also a fantastic resource if you just tell them to tell stories
Mm-hmm.
and tell them to say how great it is. Because honestly, salespeople very seldom know how to use the product they're selling.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is, it brings up a really interesting conversation around this, right? So first thing is that stories are the thing that sell. They create that emotional connection with people, and they're what draw people in or push people away. And you will find that sometimes your story pushes people away, and that's okay. They're not the right fit for you. But when they draw in, you continue elaborating and building that story. The second thing to remember is that like the facts and figures, that's what actually tells. So it informs the decision, but it's not what makes the ultimate decision. Often, as a founder of a technical company, or hey, you're passionate about numbers and spreadsheets, the easy thing for us to default to is to just, I always say you just throw up all over people with how great you are and all the things that you do and this cool little gadget over here. And
Yeah,
technically,
so excited.
so excited about all of it. And the customer's like, that's cool, but that doesn't really help my problem. So it's
Mhm.
your job to come up with the stories and then enable your entire organization, not just salespeople with the stories. But I believe that growth is an organizational function. So your customer success should know, your finance people should know the stories, because you want that entire organization on the same page and excited about what you're doing. And the stories are what help create that mission and help move things forward, and just create really cool experiences. When a customer comes to you, they can feel if your organization's on board or if people are disconnected. Stories is what pulls us all together.
Totally agree. What would you say, Ashley, is either a good time in your business, which I know it depends, but talk to me about the factors to consider when you're thinking about outsourcing your sales function? Because I know that as founders, we can't do it forever and ever and ever. We can't be on every sales call forever, especially if you're trying to scale a company that's higher volume. And what do you think are some of the ways to know you're ready to outsource that? And also tips on outsourcing that, because I feel like, on the flip side, even though there are some that want to hire it out immediately, there are some that will cling on to it for dear life, like me.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who is, probably in good shape to start outsourcing? How would they know they are? And what are some of the steps that you recommend they take to see if they are or to start?
Yeah. Um, and as you mentioned, like where this comes into the business really depends on a lot of factors. It depends on where the founder wants to take the business. Maybe the founder is cool with making 100,000 a year and they can maintain that and sustain. Like they do a launch every quarter and they're like building the business out. Other organizations and founders, maybe they want to scale up faster. So I think there's two things. Where do you want to go and how fast do you want to get to your destination? Those are going to be triggers. But when you're kind of ready to start looking at external support is once you have some of those foundational elements down. You have your message down, you have at least one target audience down that you're going after, and you have your key performance indicators down so you know what you're measuring and you know that works. So, hey, my audience, we're going after accountants and we have our messaging. We know we're really good and really different here, and here's what makes us stand out in the market. And we know that, our emails and outreach lead into meetings, lead into proposals, lead into customers eventually coming to us. You have that established. That is then something that you can take into a sales playbook or a framework, and you can bring on a person and help onboard them and say, hey, here's how we do it. And you bring them along for the journey. You don't just hire them on and say, hey, here's the book, go at her. You want that person who can come along the journey with you. So they start shadowing your calls, shadowing how you're doing things. And what you're kind of doing is trying to make that consistency and really make your sales a machine, right? But you want to make it a machine without losing that human element. There is in sales, and I believe in business, we've lost our human element in many ways. It's so transactional, and I believe the people who will really stand out moving forward are the people who can make that a relationship play and still move business forward and still come to a transaction, but it's a more meaningful transaction rather than just sign the paperwork on to the next. And then how you actually hire that person. There's outsourced firms where you can go out and hire like an outsourced team through a third party company. They come in and do your sales. They play a role, but I don't believe they're your long-term solution. If you're looking at, let's say that you're still going to be the closer and you want more meetings, you can go out and hire a third party company that will book meetings for you. But you have to remember, you still have to onboard that team and you still have to ramp that team just as you would an individual. So if you can afford to hire somebody in-house, especially for a new company, I'm a big believer in like newer grads. They come with a certain energy. They don't have bad habits, or most of the time they don't have bad habits, and you can ramp them quickly. I've had a lot of success with going out and finding a really like eager, personable MBA grad who wants to grow a career, bring them in, and I train them on how to do the top end of my sales, the outreach, the booking, the appointments, the having those initial conversations. Then we do the actual kind of discovery calls and like demos and like proposals and solution presenting together. And then they follow through. And then eventually that person ramps up and they can start taking on more and more of that. So if you're a founder, you're kind of like on a tight budget, you can't go out and, hire an experienced person. I believe that's a really great way of doing it. When hiring somebody, hire for the person, don't hire for the skills. So if you're in technical sales, you don't have to go out and have like a computer programmer to sell your product most of the time. Hire people based on their soft skills or their emotional intelligence, and you can train all of that technical stuff. You can train all of that product knowledge, and oftentimes you can't train the other way. It's really hard to train those people skills, but if you find somebody who has people skills and relatable, you can train all of that technical stuff as part of your onboarding process.
I love that. And we've talked a little bit about the same sales framework and the sales funnels. I know a lot of, early stage business owners don't necessarily have a structure around their sales process. They kind of just get on the call and do their thing. And they think that they're like, well, I can't really bottle this up, right? It's hard to figure out the science behind it. And this was something I struggled with a lot where I was like, I don't know, I'm just selling. And you would have to look back and go, what are you doing though? And how would you define that and teach that? That is very difficult. What are some of your tips to teach how you sell or even identify what your framework is? Because I think everyone has one and they may not even know it.
Absolutely. So, there are many different thoughts around sales framework, and it depends on how complex the solution is that you're selling, how long it takes to sell, right? Some solutions, it takes 1 week to sell. Some take 18 months or 24 months to sell, depending on how complex they are. So that's one thing to think about your framework, for your sales framework. But a sales framework basically has kind of 4 key components. First one is where do you actually find your audience? How do you actually reach out to them and knowing where to find them? Are they hanging out on LinkedIn? Is our the best route to find the clients going to a conference? Is it to go out and partner with an organization and get referrals? So where do we actually find them? Once you've identified where to find them, you then have to figure out how to kind of get them into your tribe, right? How do I actually get them engaged with me? So a lot of the time on podcasts, we'll send people to a free download link, which gets people into our tribe and gets them on social media and gets them following us. Maybe it is, they're going through Facebook and they see a lead or an ad that says, hey, download your quick start guide for 2023 for your new accounting system. They download it. That gets them into the tribe. Once that happens, you then need a way of actually engaging and warming them up. And I don't recommend just calling somebody up as soon as they sign up for your list. Be like, hey, Shannon, how you doing today? I see that you signed up for the list, because that's just creepy. So you need a way of warming those people up and then having a trigger to actually get them to engage with you. And then from there, you have to understand how you're selling. Is this a solution where you need to have a conversation with people? In most service-based businesses, accountants, consultants, advisors, there's a conversation to be had. So I often just use as a book a meeting, let's have a chat. From there, and I always say that chat is not to sell you anything, because it's not. I want to learn. And on that initial call, 90% should be the individual talking, 10% should be you talking. If you notice on that initial call that you're doing 90% of the talking, you're doing something wrong. So it's a fact-finding mission. From there, you kind of say, hey, this sounds like a good opportunity for us to continue the conversation. I believe we can help you. Or, you know what, this doesn't sound like a good situation. Let's just shelve this for a little while and we'll revisit it in 6 months. If you decide to move forward, you then take them through kind of a solutioning and build out a solution that can support them. Maybe you have standard packages. Maybe you create custom proposals. I never just send a proposal off to a client. I always book a proposal review call. So when you're to the stage, you've done that discovery, you understand, you have agreement that they want to see how they could work with you. Don't just say, great, I'll send you over a proposal by the end of the day. Because when you do that, 2 things happen. People will get cold feet as soon as they hang up the call with you. And all of a sudden you send them a proposal and it's 20 pages long. What's the first thing they do? They flip to page 20 and they look at the price and they go, oh, that's way too much. And they never talk to you again. So you have to continue building that relationship. And the thing, if you review a proposal on a call, is you have the opportunity to have a conversation. So it's not just a black and white number. They understand context of what they're getting. And if it doesn't meet their needs, you can then kind of reshape and say, hey, Shannon, we were off. Let's redevelop this and we'll meet again next week to discuss further. It does two things. It builds trust, and it also helps make sure that you're getting the right kind of client. And then if you do those steps right, the close shouldn't be hard. Getting that person to do business with you should never be like this hard arm exercise where you're like struggling to pull them across the line. If you do this right, it should be as simple as saying, you can see here that we're able to help you. We can connect you up with some other clients. Here are some testimonials. Are you ready to start? And it's as simple as that. But that's also a fundamental thing that so many people miss, is they'll go through everything perfectly and then they're so scared to ask. That last moment comes and they're scared to ask for the business. You have to make the ask. If you make the ask and they say no, you can find out why. If they say yes, you can find out when to start. But you do have to make the ask for that sale. And then on the other side of it, kind of the fourth part is, if you service that client really well, you can then get referrals. You can get repeat business, especially in this consulting advising space. The amount of resell and continued business is so much easier than going out and finding new clients all the time. So serve a customer really well, make them really happy, build that relationship, do more business, and then say, hey, Shannon, do you have any friends who I might be able to talk to? Because I really like working with you. And I bet you have similar people inside of your network who I'd like to work with, because there's certain people you'll like to work with as a business owner. And there's certain people that you just will not want to work with inside of your business. So if you find people you like, tap into their networks, because like-minded people typically work with like-minded individuals.
Yep. And you hit on asking for the business, which I think is really important for two reasons. One is to obviously ask for the business and to actually close the sale. But the other reason is to know where you are on their timeline of their decision. So the other part of it is, okay, are we ready to get started? And they say, well, I have a few more questions. Let them tell you how far along on that journey that you are right now for their decision, because you can keep talking and talking and talking. They could have made the decision. And I've done this before too. As a buyer, it drives me insane where I'm like, I'm in. And they keep talking. And, and I'm like, I'm
Absolutely.
in. I'm in. Just let me go. Let me close the sale. And then like, you're losing me now because you're annoying me. And like there is too much. You have to figure out, where are you at, and check in with yourself and check in with them and go, are we close to that decision right now, by just asking for the business? And if they say no, it's not only feedback, but it's also, great, what more information can I provide that will help you make that decision?
Yeah.
And that, let them tell you what they need. Because I think one of the biggest things that salespeople think is that they know more than the customer about what the customer needs. And you have to like let that go and just listen to what they're telling you, because a customer will tell you, I just need to go talk to my spouse. Okay, great. Can we touch base again tomorrow after you talk to him, her, right? And it really is that simple as like acknowledging when someone says what they need in order to make a decision, just listening to that and saying, okay, great. And addressing that, not as an objection. I don't even like the word objection. I think it's just extra steps in their journey to a decision that you need to guide them through. And that's really what it comes down to. But I can't tell you how many times I've been sold to where they either ask for the sale too soon. It's like asking for a date after 2 DMs. I'm like, okay, chill. I got more questions for you before I agree to give my time to you.
Absolutely.
But also the like, I already said yes, stop messaging me.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, objection is a very salesy term.
Yeah.
All an objection is it needs more understanding. You need more
Right.
clarity. You need to peel the onion and keep asking questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think as humans, when we're in so-called sales mode, but if you're going on that date, you're in sales mode, your nerves and emotions get the best of you. And all of a sudden you're like, Shannon has said yes to the date, and you're going down the road, like just rambling. And that person's like, maybe I got myself into a bad situation. Right. So one of the most powerful things that you can do in a sale, in a conversation, because sales is just a conversation, getting to know you, building a relationship back and forth, is ask a question and pause and allow the silence to sit there awkwardly. 10 seconds can feel like 3.5 hours because it's silent. You're looking at them, they're looking at you, or you're just sitting silent on a phone, which is even more awkward. But sometimes people just need time to think, and they need to be able to craft a response instead of just coming back. So sit in the silence. And then when somebody comes back with a response and they say, yes, we're ready to buy, or they say, you know what, we're not quite ready yet, the next best thing you can do is just reframe that same response back to them. And it just causes them to pause, rethink, and then respond. So they say, hey, Shannon, we're not ready yet. And you go, oh, really? You're not ready yet? Help me understand. Silence. And then they'll either tell you, we just don't know what we're doing. Or, you know what? We're not ready. We can't do this until February. And then as a business owner, you're like, okay, I may actually have something lined up for February. So I didn't get the opportunity in business today, but now I can start building, and this is a whole other topic, but I can start building a pipeline of my deals.
Yeah.
And I can stage my business because you can only take on so much at a time. And wouldn't it be great to know that you have business right through the end of 2023 lined up, ready in your pipeline?
Totally. And it also leaves them with a good sense of you that like, oh, that's great. Okay. So it's not in your mind, you're thinking, okay, it's not if, it's when. And it's okay, you'll be ready in February. How about end of January, I give you a call back and see where you're at, or whatever that may look like for you. And it's so powerful when, as a customer, someone just hears me when I say that and they don't keep going. They're like, okay, great. And then they respect my boundary, if you will, of saying that. And they're listening to me when I say, I'm not ready until then. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's fine. We won't, I'll continue sending you, information or whatever that, maybe you're on an email list, maybe you're sending value, you're just continue nurturing them. Right. But then like, tell me when to follow up with you and let them dictate the process, and they will respect you for it, but they will remember that you listened to them, and that will make a good impression. So I think that's really powerful. Ashley, thank you so much for jumping on the show and giving your insights on the sales process. Can you just tell everyone where people can find out more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. So right now, the best place to find me is at my website. It's just www.ashleyfrank.com. Nice and easy to find. On there, you'll find links to social and all of that kind of stuff. I'm still quite new in doing my own thing. So I'm definitely on the journey like many other business owners and figuring things out one piece at a time. And what I do is I do a lot of coaching and workshops for entrepreneurs who are looking to make a difference in the world. I don't just want to work with people who are there to make a lot of money. I want people who want to make a lot of money, but also make a difference in their lives and the lives of others. So I kind of call them like impact-driven entrepreneurs and business owners or mission-driven folks. And I want to work with them through those different challenges they have. So we could do coaching around how to set up a sales system. We could do coaching how to just have better conversations and get out of your own head prior to those sales calls and setting up for the week, and just really focused on action. I think there's so much sales information out there on the internet, but it's not focused on action. So when I work with clients, I want to discuss what we're doing. I want to have a roadmap for how we're getting there. And then I'm going to be there to be that little reminder and help hold you accountable to make sure that we're moving forward. But I'm also going to be there to kind of pick you up when you've had a bad call and make sure that we're cheering on and continuing forward. Because one thing to remember is just because one person said no, doesn't mean that everybody else is going to say no. And because they said no today, doesn't mean that they won't come back to you in 6 months or 2 years' time. So just because somebody says no, don't just flat out give up on them. Make sure that you're always building value and building that relationship.
I love that. And I really appreciate all the insights you're sharing with everyone today and kind of dispelling the myth that sales is this, like obligatory thing we all have to do. It's really all about service. And I can appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Ashley.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you so much for having me, and have a great one.